Thank you. Thank you. Well, I gotta confess, I didn't show that video just to show home videos or home pictures of myself, because I have to admit I was a cute kid when I was small, but I was kind of awkward and hideous when I was in the adolescent years, and that's the one I hate to show when I'm in high school with all that hair and all that. But those were the times, right? But the reason why I really showed that video is because I think it explains pretty well my background in terms of how I started from very humble beginnings here in the San Joaquin Valley, and what really truly is possible if one puts their mind to it and decides to get a good education, especially in an institution such as here at the University of Pacific. And so how was it possible, though? I mean, we have to look at the journey, and if you don't mind, I'd like to, take a road down memory lane and explain to you in an anecdotal fashion, because I think the whole key to all this is the parents. There's a lot of times that it's very easy to put the blame on somebody else. It's very easy to say, the school district is not doing their job. It's very easy for the school district to say, well, the federal government's not giving us enough federal dollars to do our job. And yet, one just has to look at the mirror as parents and say, well, maybe we have a part in it as well. And I can certainly, as a father of 5, this is something I continuously think about, because of the fact that I always look at myself and say, what motivated Jose to move forward? And a lot of it had to do with our humble beginnings and not having the things that we wanted as kids, the toys that we wanted, the bike that we wanted. And so we always looked for a better way, a way out, if you will. And so as a father of 5, now I'm in middle class, and I always tell myself, I said, okay, how am I going to instill that same drive into my kids? I think if I could find that recipe and bottle it, I'll be set for life and thus solve my problem, right? But my life started basically here in the San Joaquin Valley, and we were a typical migrant farm working family, and we worked here in the fields. We used to spend 9 months here and 3 months in Mexico. So it took me a while to master the English language, because we were moving throughout those 9 months, school district to school district. It wasn't until a second grade teacher asked my parents that we ought to stay in one place so we can. She explained it in very simple terms. She said, she described us kids as trees. She said, if you keep transplanting a tree, they're going to grow weak. You have to stay in one place so that the trees grow deep roots, branches grow big, and you have big trees. And my parents took that to heed. But the lessons were such that, I remember the very first time my dad told us this. After a hard day's work, because we would work Saturday and Sundays with my parents, and then while all my friends loved summer vacation, us kids hated it because we knew we were going to work 7 days a week in the fields. So after a hard day's work, we would get in the back of the car, and my dad would then look at us. He would stare at us, make eye contact with each 4 of us, and he would say, "How do you guys feel today?" And we would say, "Well, we're tired." And of course he would say, "Good." He says, "I'm glad you are tired, because you kids have the distinct privilege of living your future now." And I remember I was the youngest one of them, and I said, "Living my future now?" I scratched my head. I said, the old man got sunstroke out there, But then he went on to explain. He said, "Yes, living your future now, because I'm not going to force you to go to school. I'm not going to force you to get good grades. But if you don't, you have the distinct privilege of living your future now, because this is what you're going to do the rest of your life." And truly powerful message. And every day after that, he kept drilling that into us. We would play games because we would say, "He's going to forget today. He's going to forget." My mom it was the master motivator. You know, I think both of them would have made great psychologists. You know, because I remember she put the burden of responsibility on us kids. You know, it was always up to us that, you know, to pull the family out of the situation that we were in. You know, I guess in a sense, you know, you're kind of forced to grow up quicker. But I think as parents, you know, and I've tested with my kids on this, and it actually does work. Is, you know, you put that burden of responsibility on them, in the sense that you challenge them, and they do respond to you. I remember we would go into an office, and there would be a gentleman with a suit and tie. And my mom would say, you know, I'll be there with my ripped jeans and holes in the shoes on my pants, and my shoes and everything, holes in my shoes and ripped pants. And we'd go into an office, and there's a gentleman with a suit and tie. And my mom would grab me and say, what do you see there? And I said, well, I see a man with a suit and tie. And of course, she says, no. She says, what I see is I see you. I said, you know, that's how you should be when you grow up. If you go to school, you know, that's the kind of job I want to see you in. So she always talked in terms of never, I hope you go to school, or I hope you do this. She always talked in terms of when. She put that level of expectation on us all the time. She also, every day after school, we would come home, and she, without fail, she would sit us on the kitchen table. Sure, you know, she would make her tortillas and her rice and beans and feed us, but we wouldn't be allowed to get out of there until we finished our homework. And she would check it. And in spite of them having a third grade education, you know, they couldn't help us beyond the third grade, but they were smart enough to realize when the homework was done or not. And I mean, it only took me one time, you know, to test that theory out, and I still remember it, you know. And then a lot of people say, well, how did a migrant farm worker dare to become an astronaut, or dare to dream to become an astronaut? And you know, that's a story I remember quite vividly. You know, we were, it was 1972, Apollo 17. I was all of 9 years old, and we had an old black and white TV. You know, we didn't have a remote. I was the remote control. But we also had those rabbit ear antennas. And of course, when something important came on, I would go up and adjust it, because I was also the official antenna adjuster. And of course, everybody knows that, I know this now because I'm an electrical engineer, that once you grab the antenna, you're well grounded, the signal immediately improves, right? Well, guess what my dad always used to say? Stay there, right? And of course, the Apollo mission was no exception. I stayed there, and now I kid around with my siblings, because I tell them, see, if you guys would have helped me, maybe you guys would have been astronauts too, because it was through osmosis. It was through osmosis that I became an astronaut. You know, the signals passed through my body, right? But I remember being mesmerized by the images of the astronauts, Gene Cernan walking on the moon. I would go outside, see the moon, come back in, watch, do that several times. And I would say, my God, you know, we have humans up there 250,000 miles away. Remember that day? I said, that's what I want to be. I want to be an astronaut. And I shared that dream with my parents. And, you know, my parents could have said, hey, you know, the person that got too much sun today is my son, because now he thinks he's going to be an astronaut, right? But, or they could have lowered the expectations. But that's not what they did. What they did is they sat me down at the same table, dining table, and they said, so you want to be an astronaut? And I would say, yes, sir. And so, you know, they sat down and they said, well, you know what? You can do it. And let us show you how. We're going to give you the recipe, the ingredients to the recipe. And my dad would do it like if it's a big secret, you know. And he says, first, you need to know where you want to go. I said, okay, I want to be an astronaut. Second, you need to know where you're at. I said, well, I know where I'm at. And then you have to know the steps. Draw yourself a map to get there. Know how to get there without skipping steps, because you can't skip steps. I said, okay. He says, you've got to have heart and ganas, he would call it, will. Because you need to be able to do it, not because I want you to do it, not because your mom wants you to do it, but because you want to do it. So you got to be willing to work hard. Finally, he says, you have to get yourself an education. You mix all that together, and you could be whatever you want to be. And this recipe, I guarantee you folks, works in Paraguay, it'll work in India, and it'll work here in the United States. Because that's what I took with me, and that's what I grew up with in terms of making my dream a reality. And so it's very important that as we grow also here within our own community, is that we learn how to give back, that we learn how to give back. You know, I was listening to the song by Sugar Water Purple, and I was listening to the words, and you know, it struck a chord with me. It says, you know, that part of the song says, it's easy to say something, stand there and do nothing, and then I'll paraphrase, and watch the world go by. But you know, I think a true individual who cares about society needs to step out of the box of their comfort and do something, just as all these 15 other speakers are doing today. We have here Ashley Coleman, who said, you know your greater purpose. And I think we can make a difference. I think I can make a difference by doing so. And so I thank you very much, and I hope if you took in anything from all of this, you've taken that recipe, because I think it works in any part of your life, whether it's your educational life, whether it's for your children, or your professional life. So thank you very much.